And Bas, meet my friend Tristan, is a mind-blowing human being too.
Hello, Tristan.
So
That's nice to see you. So we're three mind-blowing people here, right?
I hope so, but two for sure. So
You know, self-perception, right?
We all know this thing, right? So how are you guys? How is
fine.
Yes.
Fine. So different environment. I travel to my family, so visiting my parents. I think I said it last time. My niece has a birthday.
Oh yeah, you told me.
Yep, turned 6 today, and tomorrow is a big party for the family.
Oh, okay. And you've been invited to what party? Because you said that there were.
Yeah, it turns out that I'm invited to the family party. Today is girls' party.
Oh, okay. So you could skip it.
Yes.
So yeah, Jesse. So we should have another couple of people coming up. I don't know if VC was showing up. So hello, Jesse.
Jesse,
Ciao.
hello. Greetings.
Hi.
So meet Bas, who's he's some sort. Can I say something? Like Bas is a sort of painter who dips his brush into latent spaces. Is it an accurate description of this?
I think so. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah.
And we had. So Bas and I tried to meet for maybe 2 months now, and when he was ready, I was not ready. When I was ready, he was not ready. And we couldn't figure things out. But we talked today for like an hour and a half or even more about a lot of cool stuff, which I took some notes. And the Bas Tristan is a AI guru. So he and a music composer with AI, and Jesse is another wonderful human being. You're a project manager, right, Jesse? Forgot.
Product manager. Yeah.
Product manager. Okay, but I mean, I think what really I like, and it's remarkable for me about Jesse is he's artistic eye for nature. So when I hardly ever think about something else when I think about Jesse. So Jesse, I take it as a compliment. I really like that. And Bas, I was telling you before that there was a friend of mine who saw nature as a complete work of art, right? And I was talking about him actually.
Okay.
We had this kind of exchange with him.
I think Tristan and I are linked somewhere.
That we are. Yeah.
We are, huh? Yeah.
On LinkedIn. Yeah. We are linked on LinkedIn.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, both of you have many connections. So I had the craziest day today.
Tell us.
I went to some sort of speed dating online without the date. So it was called the generative pollination kind of thing. But the way it works, it was a gathering. I don't know how many of us, maybe 20, maybe 30, a number of us. And they would break us into small groups, like one-to-one, give us 7 minutes to talk about each other. Then we will convey back. And then we did this again, 4 or 5 times. I had crazy conversations. A woman who's a doctor who worked for... with physicists at the nano level doing crazy stuff. Another person involved in permaculture. I had super cool conversations. Then I talked to Bas. I had the meeting and the person ditched me. All right. Then came Bas' turn and I was mind blown because we talked for an hour and a half, and I'm gonna post the conversation because it was great. Bas, you're the second guest of that kind of podcast that I was doing. The first one was Tristan, and then the third, I had another meeting after you, and I've been talking to an entrepreneur in the US who's trying to build AGI without deep learning. Hello, with hard coding everything. Like he's got this tool that apparently, according to him, can distinguish even subtle differences in language. So for example, you point a bird and you say, this is a cute little bird, and then a cute little canary or something like this, and then you go back to the machine, to the model, to the thing, and you ask, what's that? And you say, a bird. So it distinguishes, you know, the subjective level of your utterance, basically, from so from the objective thing that you're talking about. Now, we talked for over an hour. I was blown away, like such a smart man. So yeah, had a great day. I'm pumped. So how was your day? How was your day, everyone? Everyone else?
Thinking I had this great experience when traveling. So it took me 2 hours by train. It's short distance traveling here in Germany, and I went to the restaurant in the train. And I was like taking off the mask, like restaurant, and then the lady came and looked at the whole audience and said, "You should still wear masks," because the majority of people was not wearing masks. So, well, if you didn't notice, we still have mask mandates here in Germany, so we're a little late.
Yeah,
we're a little late, starting late with measures, stopping late with measures. So it was quite nice. I had some inspiring time there with my remarkable, like sketching down a couple of ideas that I have a customer project, and then we'll spend quite some fun time with my family, talking, updating ourselves, each other, what's happened. And then, well, also a little composing.
TensorFlow.
Well,
Hold on. Hold on. I need to let Isi, 1 second. Yeah, give me 1 second. So Tristan, can you introduce Tomek? Because I cannot multitask.
Tomek, welcome to this extraordinary round of extraordinary people. So I met Tomek at a data science retreat at a boot camp where, well, what I still remember is this great day when you landed your data engineer job, and I think you came in with not a six-pack but a whole box of beer. It took, I think, 1 or 2 more batches after your batch to actually drink all of those beers. Oh well, your batch left a couple of beers. I'm not sure.
We had a couple more reasons to celebrate throughout.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I made it.
Hello. Oh wow.
Hello.
So badass. Like this representation behind you. I love it. Wow.
It's old. That's my personal Zoom. That's why I'm finally from my personal computer. Sorry for being. I lost also the link, but I'm here. So
okay. So this is great.
Quick feedback. We should include the Zoom link to the Google invite.
It's a long story, but okay. So, Bas, you can unmute yourself if you want. Like, it's fine. Okay. So, or not, like however you want. So, since we have 2 guests today, we have a composer and a painter who both use the wonders of latent spaces to, to produce. Why don't we do a centering exercise, like a meditation, and then I give you, each one of you, like maybe like 30 minutes, and maybe a little more, but a little, we're gonna interrupt you quite a bit. So like we did it like last time, okay? So Bas, just to give you a sense, we did this already, and it's gonna go a little bit like the kind of conversation that we had before. I would like you to show us a little bit of your art, talk a little bit about it, but then everybody will interject, and anybody who has a question will just talk. Because I learned, because to sample better from a latent space, you need the randomness, and that's chaos, disorder. So we will add a little bit of disorder to the discussion. Like right? That's what creativity looks like to me.
Sure.
So I will start like some sort of meditation exercise with you guys. So I'm gonna ask you to like 4 or 5 minutes. So we breathe in, we breathe out, close your eyes. Okay, if you want to close your window, do it and then come back. So first thing I'm gonna ask you is to pay attention to your breath. Check if there is any tension. And yeah. So if you agree and let me, I will do something a little bit more, little different today. So normally I ask you to focus either on your belly or the tip of your nose, like a point. So I would like you this time to focus on my voice, because I'm gonna recite you a long poem, very long. And I would like to see like what, if something resonates and how you feel, like, so you pay attention to how you're feeling. And if you have objections, it's too late. Okay. So the allure of travel begins with otherness. See, what otherness does is it resacralizes our experience of the world. It very quickly dissipates and strips away the sense of banality that suffuses our typical waking consciousness. When we travel, the ordinary takes on a heightened engagement. There can be pleasure in the nuance. Having a conversation with a waitress in a simple cafe in a country you've never been can take on the qualities of being in a museum hall. For it's this heightened interestingness that we are after. There is this notion of creating a new relationship, a new distance between you and that which is familiar, and then a new relationship which closes that distance. For it is encountering the unknown that makes us come alive, but then it's our impulse to marshal a response, to contend and make sense of the land beyond the map, that it's also part of the human story. So why do I say this to you? Well, I say this to you because we all want to experience heightened aliveness. In the world of religious scholars, Houston Smith, we all want to take our passing illumination and turn them into abiding light, which was echoed by Jamie Wheal when he said, we all want to take our altered states and turn them into altered traits. But this requires a kind of remembering, a tapping into a source code, an awakening of our common ecstasy. It's like that great line that says, be humble, for you are made of earth, but be noble, for you are made of stars. Of that wonderful line by Nikita Gill that she says, we have calcium in our bones and iron in our veins, carbon in our soul and nitrogen in our veins, 93% stardust with souls made of flame. We're all just stars that have people name. At the end of the day, this is what we are, the unvarnished truth. It's like that great line that says, the bad news is we are falling through space. No one knows what's going on, and no one knows where we're heading to. But the good news is that there is no ground. There is no ground. I went to God just to see, and I was looking at me. It's Terence McKenna's notion that the answer lies in being awake. Do not give in into astonishment, but pay attention, for absolute unmixed attention is a form of prayer. And attention is sudden, close, graduates into surprise, and this into astonishment, and this into stupefied amazement, says Charles Darwin. Or Henry Miller when he says, even an ordinary blade of grass, if given our complete, unvarnished attention, becomes a miraculous, incomprehensible, glistening object of beauty, an infinite thing in itself. Wake the fuck up, cleanse your doors of perception, for as Aldous Huxley say, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For is this not we ultimately want? To strip away the trappings of the routine, to strip away the trappings of the familiar, to salivate and froth at the mouth in the face of infinity? We don't travel to move around, say Pico Iyer. We travel in order to be moved. I don't cry when I'm sad, said Dawkins. I cry when I'm moved. We don't cry when something is sad, said Alain de Botton. We cry when something is more beautiful than we expected it to be. True healing lies in piercing your representations, in getting into the territory beyond the map, in violating your expectations, in having encounters of knowledge by acquaintance, and not just knowledge by description. You have to go there to know there. So just go. Go. And you will find what you're looking for. You'll behold the wishing well. You'll have the cosmic download, and you will bathe in existential delight. And I want nothing less for you, and I want nothing less for me. For this is our common ecstasy. And when you're ready, just slowly come back. Start with your feet, your fingers, your arms, and then you slowly open your eyes.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Yes. Did you like it? Nice, too long, strange.
And a very, very violent sneeze at the end.
Yeah. It's a good sign. I take it. Okay. So a quick round of questions, silly as usual, quick answers. So Tristan, what's the coolest thing you've done this week?
The coolest thing I've done this week.
Quick.
Jesus Christ, quickly. I composed another song and I added a vocoder to my vocals.
There you go. Jesse, give me something really nice you did this week. Cool.
I met with a New York Times bestselling author this week.
Awesome. TensorFlow, tell us. Tomek.
I fell asleep under the stars on a mountain at 2,000 meters and slept the whole night.
Okay. Issy.
I talked about astrophotography with a colleague of mine.
Nice. Bas, something really cool you did today, this week.
It's almost a week ago, but I was in Paris opening a group exposition where some work of mine was displayed in a gallery.
Awesome. Okay, nice. All right. I don't want to hear anything else. Tristan, would you want to go first? And again, you will be interrupted. So maybe if you want to put a timer, I can do that, or you do it. So tell me how
you're talking about my stuff, right?
Yes, talk about your things, your art.
Yes. 10 minutes. Jesus Christ.
No. We can do like 20. No, so an hour and a half. You can do 30 minutes in total. So you talk, we interrupt, 30 minutes, and then we hand it to Bas. Okay?
Let's just follow the flow.
In an hour and a half. So go.
Go. Have you ever seen something like this here? Well, translates the question, who of you is into producing music?
In
No idea.
Fruity Loops
I've seen it
years
in
ago.
Fruity Loops,
DJ context. Yeah.
Great.
It's
So,
a sequence, right?
that is, yeah, digital audio workstation. That's how we cool people call it. It's logical, which is basically the same thing, right? I don't know how. Oh, sorry. I think I have to share the audio first. Computerton freigeben. And now, please brace yourselves. It could come across a little loud. Maybe it isn't. Let's see in a moment. So a quick impression. This is what keeps me busy quite a lot of time, and this is almost at the end of a road. The beginning of a road is me sitting down. I want to create a song, and this is after I already used an AI to come up with just very, very fancy note events, and I always arranged everything that the AI spat out and added proper instruments to the whole thing. What's now missing is, for this song, number 5, Arise, I don't know, no, still lyrics and vocals missing. And after that, it would just be mixing and mastering, and then I have a whole full song. And what's behind that is that I'm now working on the 4th album of my music project called Hexagon Machine, which it's kind of a vehicle that I push around where I can channel all the creativity that I get from AI into something that is, well, manifests in the world. For this album, I go, when it comes to the sound, in a little bit more advanced direction. Before that, it was just synthwave without vocals, and now, well, I have a guitar synthesizer now, which gives it a proper thickness, and I also decided to add vocals to that, so it keeps me kind of busy.
So could you tell us what we're seeing? So are these the bars? Like could you show, tell us a little bit what we're?
Of course. Yeah, what you see is also color code involved. So this is, in this color, this is a part that is usually the chorus. And this blue I usually use for verses, and then everything in between has different colors. And what you see here is from left to right, yes, it's the time. And here, those are note events. I could just quickly show it, because this might be very interesting for people who are not using this on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
So here you go. Those are note events, and this is just the guitar. And this came from an AI. Actually, in this whole setup, there's only a handful of notes that I added, a handful of note events that I added. Everything else is just the AI. And here's something else. This is the bass line. This is very straightforward, very simple. Just the bass doing something. And I have this alternative bass floating around, gives it a little bit more thickness. For the room in it, and in combination with the guitar, just awesome. And here, drums. This is all you need. I find it's quite fantastic, and I have to stress that what I like about this is that coming up with such a picture here where you have so many colors and so many note events in it is something that now went down to quite a lot of time for me. Doing a whole song to not so much. Usually goes down to half because I use a composing tool. So this is the stage before that. And there are a couple of stages even before that, but they're kind of static, so you do them once. But this is a tool that I use all the time.
Did you make this?
I made this, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, it's always a question when you have an AI, you have to package it in some
And
user
you guys, like, so you should say we. We made
Yeah, all of us.
yeah, no, like you and the AI.
Well, you and the AI contributed a little because this whole thing with the co-pilot. So it has been implementing AI has been implementing a lot of source code that is under this visualization here. And how I usually start, and I think you're all curious about, well, how does this all happen? That I just create a track and see if I find something that inspires me.
Oh, you just generated the track now?
Yeah, I just generated something. This is the beauty of PyTorch running on M1 because no hardware accelerated. And we run this. I don't like that one, so let's change it. It's now alternative metal, so maybe I'll change it to power metal. So power metal. So it's another one. Very simple, very straightforward. And now I would usually ask another question. If I like this drum pattern, if I like the beat, what about giving me a guitar? Here's the guitar. So if I don't like this, I skip it, create something else. So when I get the feeling that something in here is already going in the right direction, so I like the first bar, let's recompose the other 3 bars. Now it's going wild. Very nice. So what you see here is a user interface on top of a lot of models that I've trained, GPT-2 trained on music. And I'm now in a certain kind of dialogue with the AI. You see that AI spits ideas at me and I say, well, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, over time, until I have found something that is very, very appealing, and then I turn it into a whole song. And the progress just continued. You also need a bass. I mean, what would metal be without a bass? You see bass is doubling everything. Very straightforward. And maybe we can go down with the note density. Yeah, that's fine. And I usually spend a couple of minutes with that until I have a little bit more of that, something that really attaches, and I can also add more bars in time. And what you see here has been generated by this neural network here. So Metal 2022, which is a neural network that I have trained a couple of weeks ago on 7,000 heavy metal songs. I have published a lot about another model that I've trained in 2021. So I redid this work to, get started. And here, this is my pride. This is a neural network that I did not publish so far. This neural network here, MMD full, has been trained on 400,000 songs.
Okay.
The pre-processing took 30 hours on 96 CPUs, only the pre-processing without any training. And then I trained it for 1 or 1.5 weeks on 16 CPUs.
Okay,
I'm gonna
ask you a quick question about a beginner.
Go.
So if I were a beginner, I would say, does bigger necessarily mean better when you talk about models?
What is better in music?
More powerful, more creative, more original,
more powerful.
But how do you choose the data set?
Come again?
How do you choose your data set? You said 400 songs, but
400,000.
400,000 songs, yeah, but
that's 400K. It's a data set.
Go on Spotify and pick random. Yeah.
No, fortunately, almost like that. Someone crawled the internet. It's the Meta Creation Lab. Great people do some research, and they crawled the internet for MIDI files, and they came up with a collection of 400,000 unique MIDI files. I did similar work for heavy metal, so I crawled the internet, I crawled the homepage, something from the Russian web, to get a lot of heavy metal files, 7,000, which is quite a lot to listen to.
Is but 400,000 metal.
Come again?
Is it like the Maps of Metal website type thing?
I would say, well, but the good thing is the big model also contains heavy metal, and that's the thing. You always struggle with this. Well, Americans call it shit in, shit out. So the quality and quantity of your data determines how good your model is. It means that when I train a model on heavy metal, it does heavy metal very straightforwardly, no problem with that. It can also do a little classical, because classical music and other styles are also included in heavy metal. But if you have, on the other hand, a neural network that has been trained on everything you can get your dirty little hands on, you get something that is very general and can go in different directions. Every time you choose, and can go in different directions. So it masters all the genres. And here, well, what I'm using this for is to add more detail to that. Let me give you an example and see what I mean. No, I don't need more drums. That was not so good. So this is now the big neural network, and where do we have it? A string ensemble. Let's add a violin first, just a violin. Violin happens sometimes in heavy metal. Can do that.
How do you define the direction?
Come again, there was a question.
Yeah, how do you define the direction? So having trained on a bunch of heavy metal songs, how do you make them play classical music? Like make them play classical music?
There is this, I did some very, very strong pre-processing on the data. So what you see here is, those are 128 different instruments.
Yeah, can you like read a little bit through, make it a little bigger, because I would like to see how many instruments you can.
Can I zoom in here? Does that work? Let's see if this one gets bigger.
Nice.
Yeah. This one is bigger. Now this one is bigger too.
Yeah, bigger.
Tango accordion, acoustic guitar, electric bass, finger, a fretlet bass, slap bass, everything, and also esoteric things like here is leads, so synthesizer, ocarina, whistling, and these are the 128 instruments from the MIDI standard. So some people sat down and defined, well, this is going to be our representation of, like, this is our set of instruments that we work with. A couple of them are missing. A couple of them are missing dearly. And what I did,
bagpipe.
Come again?
Bagpipe. Like the Scottish instrument, also Bulgarian one. Bagpipe.
Bagpipe.
Yeah,
I think I saw that one. It might be in there, but well, maybe later we have a look at that. But I wanted, and the idea I would like to get across is, we're talking about statistical models, and in heavy metal you will find, well, a lot of guitars, especially distorted and overdriven guitars, and the respective bass and drums, and then you have something around that which can be a little bit symphonic. Sometimes in industrial metal is a little bit more synthetic synthesizer music, but you won't cover all of those instruments. So what I did is that I reduced all the guitars to one guitar, so all the different guitars to one guitar, all the basses to one bass, drums to drums. That's a no-brainer. But I took everything else that existed in the heavy metal songs and I mapped them just to piano. So when I can ask it to generate a couple of layers of piano, and then it goes into classical style, but with different idea of counterpoint. This model here, on the other hand, the big one, knows everything. There's a certain distribution behind all those instruments, so it knows its way around. And what I find fascinating is that you can push the big model into generating music in a certain genre or style by just defining which instruments to use. So, well, if I use the guitar and the bass and drums, gets heavy metal. If I use the synth bass and synth lead and the drums, I get electronic music, like Erasure, for example, gets out of this. If I select the proper instruments, I get reggae, I get chamber music out of it at the same time. This makes it quite powerful. Again, shit in, shit out. But if shit in, shit out means that if the shit is just 400,000 songs of almost everything, but it still does not, how can I say, it still can go in all different directions. It's not losing, it's not blurry, it's still there. So just by defining the instrument, it goes into a certain genre and very powerful in that sense. And still, this is a tiny little language model. It only has 20 million parameters.
Okay.
We know large language models have 175. billion channel per pair.
Billion, yeah. I mean, it's not even the largest, actually.
No,
You can go way up.
Yeah, times changed. Yeah.
Was it you to decide so many instruments, for example? Was something that you arranged, or it just came out, basically?
No, it came out from the data set.
Okay.
Because this is so great, because there's a MIDI standard, it's music notation for, well, electronic representation of music. And it really provides a lot of information in it already, like the notes and the pitches. We don't have to talk about those, but also it comes in tracks, and every track is annotated with what kind of instrument it is, so that when you load it into Logic or Cubase or Fruity Loops and Ableton, you already can hear something, and a harp will be a harp.
Okay.
So the files already have encoded each line of each instrument, and this is just a collection of all of the instruments from all of the tracks.
It's a huge annotation effort by quite a lot of people. I think it also has to do with the karaoke community, because MIDI files are for karaoke, and there are a couple of MIDI files I think that even has lyrics in it, but here not represented. And well, the only thing, quote unquote, the only thing that I do is I take every MIDI file and I map it to a representation that I can then feed into the transformer. This is text representation. I just feed it in, it crunches through this. I think the heavy metal model trained for half a day, I think. So the newest one, the big one again, 1 or 1.5 weeks. So it takes a little time to crunch through 400,000 MIDI files, which I map to 300 gigabytes of data, I think. The pre-processed data is 300 gigabytes.
What have you trained on?
Come again?
What have you trained on, like hardware-wise?
NVIDIA gave me access to a DGX2. A DGX2 is a workstation. No, it's not a workstation. It's a little bit bigger than just a workstation. It has 16 GPUs in it, 16 Teslas. I think with 16 gigabyte RAMs each. Or was it 16 or 32? I can't remember the specs of those numbers. A huge machine living somewhere, I think close to a nuclear power plant. And I'm so grateful that NVIDIA kind of saw what kind of experiments I do with deep learning, and then they said, well, we have to support this guy. So they gave me access, and they even extended the access after the first demo. So I had this for almost 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Which was a quite positively stressing time for me, because I had to keep it busy.
Yeah.
If someone gives you such a big computer, you kind of have to make sure that you run it all the time in a trained models. Let me show you something.
Tristan, before you move on, can you, that's one of the nerdiest conversations I've been in quite a while, actually. What did you train? What did you use? Can you answer it's a sort of meta level question. You say, this is what you do to use the creativity you receive from the machine, right? From the AI. Could you, in few words, define your relationship with the AI, and how does it work during the creative process? So what are you? If you compare yourself to older the composer who sits down and writes everything, right? Or any other person that today does music,
Imagine that you're sitting in a room with, let's say 1,000 heavy metal musicians. So just the tiny little heavy metal model, not the big one. 1,000 heavy metal musicians, and then you shout into this room, "I need some black metal riffs on a guitar." And then a couple of people stand up, and they decide, well, this guy is going to play a riff. And then you say, well, this riff is good. What about a bass? And then a bass player gets up and plays a little bit more. But then you say, no, not black metal for the rest. What about a little thrash metal or power metal? Then the power metal musicians stand up and generate something. So a layer on top of that. And then you would say, well, okay, this is quite nice, but now I don't like the guitar anymore. So someone else from the power metal department would stand up and play little guitars. So it's lots and lots of randomness with with a lot of musicians at the same time with different roles.
This is beautiful. I love it. So it's like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So you're like a, how do you call this? I don't even know if there is a name.
You
Composer?
conduct the composition.
Director?
Which say?
You conduct the composition.
Yeah, no, but I like the idea of
Collecting.
saying, you know, there is a bunch of people and you say, I need this, they give it to you.
Yeah, but you never have that, right? You never have that. You know how people like Metallica compose, they sit down and do the jamming sessions, and they have like 1 to 3 people in a room, and then someone comes up with something and someone adds something on top of that. But here you have it at a click of a button. Again, you have to keep this in mind. When I click, I get something almost instantaneously.
This is fantastic.
Yeah. So every time when I click, someone else stood up and played something.
Tomek, did you
Marvelous
say
piece of
something?
technology.
Or you click and two musicians that you like, but you want something in between. They have a little baby in half a second, and the baby grows up in half a second and plays in between.
Kinda,
Right.
yeah. Kinda. It's also interpolating different things. So what well, this is a horrible thing to talk about. Like, when does it copy something from the original data set? I cannot track this. With 7,000 heavy metal songs, once it did Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit, but never anything else. What I'm still missing here, and this is, well, manipulating. Now it gets very nerdy, Antonio, very nerdy.
Oh, even more? Okay.
Well, latent space manipulation with the transformer is not so straightforward like with, for example, the variational autoencoder.
Okay. So
I cannot do interpolation between 2 pieces of music here. It's something that I still miss, but already have a couple of ideas to implement that. It's not that easy, but I was a little bit afraid when I moved from this latent space representations. I used the music VAE quite a lot a couple of years ago. When I moved from there to here, that I thought this might be missing, this whole interpolation part, but I got so much more from it. So I don't feel this pain anymore.
Okay. Go give us more. Show us more.
Okay. So now comes a little drier part. Don't know if you can see it properly. Maybe I can zoom. No, zooming doesn't work.
Zoom in a little bit. Yeah.
Let me see. I have to get rid of you guys. Yeah, that should work. So very bold. Can you see this?
Yeah, yeah.
So story is here from bottom to the top. Those are different data sets that I have prepared. And here with JS Fakes, this is just a Hello World with Johann Sebastian Bach. And where is it? Luck Clean, JS Fakes, and so on. Metal, here's the metal music model. And here is MMD full 4 bars. And what you see here, this is 130 gigabytes. This is 229. I have another one, which I don't have included yet. This is the one, yeah. The other one has 300 gigabytes. So this one is just a mere 130 gigabytes of preprocessed data. So what you see here, this is this whole story, the whole journey that I had with this NVIDIA DGX2 station. The DGX2 is not a station, where I first prepared the datasets, and on almost all of the datasets, well, I trained one model on almost all of the datasets each. That's what kept it busy for a couple of months.
Fascinating.
I see. Well, and for me, I have to tell this my own journey, like when I went into the belly of the beast and then I emerged completely different man, that I started with where is it? This one. This one is what I started with last year. And then I went up to this one 10 times in 1 year. A significant difference. And it turned out that, well, for all those data sets, one model size fit it all. So it's still, I think, 6 layers of GPT-2 works like a charm. So I never changed the size of a neural network. It just crunched through bigger data sets. It's amazing.
What's the observable?
Sorry.
Oh, you see.
I just wanted to ask if the data sets are complementary in terms of do they have like overlapping songs, or all of them are different?
Some of them are overlapping. I'm quite sure that the heavy metal dataset is contained in the big one. but there are a few where I make them disjunct. So MMD pop is pop music, and there's also non-contemporary music, which is, I think, everything that was labeled as classical and romantic and baroque. It's a completely different thing, and they are not really overlapping. So it depends on the data pre-processing if you want to have all in or just a tiny little subset.
Would be so cool to see if there is, if you add salsa, what is gonna came out of it as well.
Yeah.
Salsa,
You know, there are a few people
salsa
here
and metal.
Come again?
Salsa and metal. My God.
Yeah, that should work. Actually, that should work.
I don't. Yeah, it's.
It actually does. It does. So you remember those guys? I mean, okay, sorry, it has been ages ago when you were my students at data science retreat, and we did this exercise. Like we started with the works by Howard Phillips Lovecraft, and we did this auto regression predicting the next token, and everyone went just wild and threw in all the data that you can get. Someone took the Bible and collected works by Nietzsche and combined them.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, and Plato.
And was God dead in the end, or did he live?
Well, it talked about something.
In all of us.
It was like at the beginning of the generation, it praised the Lord, and then it went straight into discussing Greek philosophers.
My God. Wow.
Yeah.
Bible and Nietzsche. Well, but I mean, why not?
Yes, so word probabilities, and here's the same. But this one is a little stronger than the things that we did in the class. In class, we did LSTMs, which are not so good at maintaining a context, and those models, they have a context of 2048 tokens.
Yeah.
So I write at the beginning, do black metal or do death metal, and then it just follows my instruction. It doesn't deviate from that. Okay. And what I've also seen, I didn't show you, is I have another model that I still have to integrate where I tell it, well, here's a chord progression. The 4 chords of awesome, for example. I think C major, G major, A minor, F major, I think in that order. And then it generates music that corresponds to that chord progression with high accuracy, so it never deviates from that. So I was also very strong on following the rules or the instructions that I lay out.
Okay.
It's quite amazing to see this.
Okay. So Tristan, 5 minutes, okay?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, please continue.
Let me check. What else do I have?
No, I mean, I'll tell you. No worries.
I had a question.
No, quickly, because this I have to show you just for the sake of completeness. There's the music, and this is the text representation. And that's why language models work like a charm on music. You just have to make sure everything is a text file. And then neural network is happy. Neural network don't care about what kind of data you feed in, which reduces the whole problem of music generation to text generation that represents music.
Wow.
And it works like, well, I'm tempted to say again, works like a charm, which it does. So this is a mantra that I say all the time.
Magic, right?
Yeah. And also one tiny little detail. I usually start with drums, but it's not obligatory. I can start with any instrument because the dataset is shuffled in the order of the instruments. Makes it very, very strong and versatile. So let me see.
This MIDI, is this what I would see if I open a MIDI file in a text editor?
No, MIDI files, I think they're binary encoded. Okay. So it's not human readable.
How does this get translated into music? This text.
This text. Yeah, it turns it into a MIDI file actually, or a note sequence. You see this here. This is a note sequence. A note sequence, note sec, is a module by the TensorFlow people, TensorFlow Magenta. This a module pip install note sec, which allows you to manipulate this data structure. You add a note, you say where it starts, where it ends, which pitch it has, which instrument it is. And that's what I actually do. So I take the neural network generates something like this. And then I just say, well, here I start a new node and I set a pitch to something and I keep track of the time where it is, translating it back to that. Okay. And then I can play it, then I can save it as a MIDI file. And once I save it as a MIDI file, I open it in Logic.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to have to write the translator back and forth.
With those different data set sizes, what are the observable differences other than the actual size?
Training takes longer.
Okay.
That's the only difference that I saw. And well, what kind of material it can generate. But already I have a model that is trained on a very diverse data set of 15,000 songs. And that's the model that I've published in this Hugging Face space, where you can click and it generates reggae, or you click and it generates synth pop. Just trained on 15,000, a good collection, a wide, diverse collection of 15,000 songs, which is it a lot? Well, for me to listen to, it is. For neural network don't care. Training half a day. Small data set. So what I saw with the big ones, higher quality in what's been generated.
Okay, so we'll get like more complex samples with the bigger models, or less repetition.
Yeah. It's more versatile because it has seen more patterns. And it can, while generating, can unroll those patterns.
This is what I wanted to ask. So bigger in terms of like both volume, but also diversity?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's politically correct model. There is diversity in it. Sorry. Bad joke. Any like, can I like, guys, do you have any of you is free to shoot a question? Then we move to Bas, and then if we have a little bit of time, we come back, because I think the fun part would be to like you interact with each other at some point, because you're doing sort of the same things, but not really. And this is, I think, where the magic for me sparks, when there is identity and difference happening at the same time. So
we'll find out. I'm looking forward.
Yes. So anybody has other questions? Sam, if you want, you can ask questions too. So anybody?
So Tristan, how long do you think it will take before a system like this produces a song that will get in the top charts without anybody, without getting popular because it is AI? So you understand what I said at the last thing?
Yeah.
I mean, I could see people liking something because it's AI and it's a bit weird and freaky, but like a Turing test for songs. When do you think the producer will say, "Oh, this is a great song. We're gonna build this," or?
Well, the Turing test was passed in the 80s with music. In the charts, I don't know. I believe that, well, you know, the good producers, they know their tricks, right? How to go from A to B in the shortest amount of effort invested. Still getting a couple of great notes out of it. So I think it's around the corner. With the Turing test, I remember the works by David Cope called virtual music. And virtual music is that you have an algorithm or some system that generates music in the style of anything. And he did quite a lot of experiments, especially with people. So experimenting with people, showing them some music, playing some music to them, and asking them, is this Chopin? Is this generated? And it turns out that not really. So when you show a piece of music that has been generated by an AI, and this is a study that I think Google conducted 4 years ago, there is a 60% accuracy of, well, 60% chance, 60% of the audience would be convinced that this is genuine human music. Right? You have a piece of music, play it to an audience, 60% of the people would say, with the AI music that has been generated back then, this is by a human. On the other hand, if you play music composed by a human to the same audience, they would have, well, 67% of the people would say this is human composed. It's a tiny little gap. Sometimes there are a couple of things that give away that it has been created by AI. Sometimes it's very, very strong on the rules. Sometimes it's too, but I think it's more like a gut feeling at the end of the day. Nothing objective, I would say.
And I guess it's also important who curates the end results and who guides the AI to a certain endpoint.
Yeah. I got feedback for my Project Hexagon machine that is not something that is easy on the ears. It's not easy on the ears because there's a lot of complexity in it, lots of nodes in it. But this doesn't come from the AI. This comes from me curating that, because I'm a more Baroque guy. I need a lot of notes to be happy, so all the time. So that's why the music has it. On the other hand, we have submitted a contribution to the AI song contest that is going to happen, I think, next month, where we go full pop music, right? So me and my fiance, we first we used AI to come up with the skeleton of a song, and then we produced it in almost no time. And we even used another AI to generate some lyrics with us in similar dialogue. And this is a little easier on the ears because not so many notes.
And I have a question about the top charts. And how about, like, what do you think of, like, if you take, I don't know, for the last, or like since there are charts available, if you take the top 3 songs and then analyze the patterns in there, because I'm pretty sure there are patterns, right? Depending also on the genre. Unfortunately, I don't know so much about music, but if you analyze that and then you take these patterns, I think then based on these patterns, and again, not telling people that it's AI generated, you can totally generate a hit, right?
Yes, you can do that. That's the one thing that I already mentioned, the 4 chords of awesome. There's this funny video on the internet by Axis of Awesome, where they play 4 chords and, showing that almost all of the pop music songs match those chords. It's a very, very nice sketch that they do on stage. So there's one thing. There's a certain set of chords that is very popular. And on the other hand side, there have been studies performed on the quality of the lyrics. Like, what's the level? How old does someone have to be in order to understand the lyrics? And turned out that pop music understanding when it comes to vocabulary used is, I think, 3rd or 4th graders in American school. So if your lyrics are too complex in a sense that you do too many exercises and using too many fancy words, might turn out that this is not very popular. So will disqualify you from entering a class.
Yeah, totally, the path of least resistance, right? I'm also curious about
Sorry. Bas, can you? Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tristan.
Most welcome. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always funny to see how different types of deep learning are quite similar in many ways. 2 weeks ago, I was on a little event showing my work there, and it was an event about AI, and there were 2 neurologists speaking about how they would detect blood clotting in a brain. And it was normally they're neurologists and they can look at scans, but when somebody is brought in the middle of the night, usually the best doctors are in their bed sleeping, and every second counts in neurology when somebody has a hemorrhage. They say time is brains, or time is brain cells, or something like that, because every minute or so, millions of brain cells die off. So they needed some kind of system to make sure that the interpretation was immediately right. So and of course they will wake neurologists when something like this happens, and they rush to the hospital. But in the meantime, they have to know how to give what kind of medicine and what they can do before they arrive. So they use and then they were telling about the whole deep learning and the way that works. And it was almost one-on-one the same as probably as what Tristan does, and
Wow.
the kind of models that I work with, who are quite purely visual. I have to tell you, I'm not a coder. I have been working with guns for a little over 3 years now, but I'm more of an I come from a very artistic direction. I've always been a visual storyteller in many ways. For the last 14 years, I have been a professional photographer for reportage and documentary. But before that, I come from a CG background, computer graphics, 3D animation, special effects compositing. And in between, I was art director for Sony Computer Entertainment for 3 years, worked on video games like Killzone and Horizon. And I started my career working with my hands because 3D animation was in its infancy, was just starting. So it was almost impossible to get your hands on something that, and I worked with plastics, with different kinds of polyester and epoxy and acrylics to make dinosaurs and insects, tabletop. So I did many things that are that were all visual storytelling. So when in the pandemic, I didn't have work for about 2 years because I used to only photograph people, mostly people, and I was already working for about a year with guns and working on Artbreeder. Tristan probably knows the software, and Artbreeder made it very easy for just a layman to experiment with latent space. First with Big Gun, and those are 1,000 categories of different household objects, insects, bananas, fruit, Volkswagens, and it can generate them because it trained on recognizing these images and synthesizing new photographs of these, but it can blend them as well. So you can make a monkey, Volkswagen, snake if you want, and it will look like a photograph, and your brain recognize it as something that you should know what it is, but you don't, and that's a very tricky thing. And I immediately got affected and hooked on this special quality of guns that makes it so fascinating. So I had 2 years time to completely dissolve in this new world. And as a photographer, I'm very used to generating a lot of images and then making the right selections, making some crops, making some small color adjustments, and building a story with those. I didn't prepare much for today because Antonio asked me about a couple of hours ago, but I can show you some work that I have done and maybe talk about that a little bit.
When you're on me, temperature is always like 0.8, 0.9, you know, the temperature of the sampling of the latent space is always like 0.9, almost like 1. So there is almost a lot of noise and chaos. So
okay.
yeah.
Well, there's different models, and there's some very easy models that can only show. Well, I'll show you. Let me share my screen here. This one. Maybe you should, Antonio. Maybe you should.
You're allowed.
I'm allowed. Okay.
Yeah.
Did it work?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Gorgeous.
Okay, so yeah, I kind of started with these things. These are all built from Big Gun, and that was trained on well, basically just on photographs. If you Google Big Gun, you will find videos where that run through this latent space, and you'll see all the categories. So you see just generated dogs and generated bananas and generated trees, and but you can combine these and you get all these weird. And you can see here that the resolution is quite low because it was one of the first publicly available guns, and from the start I just tried to find ways to get the most out of this. So I try to find ways to interpolate, extrapolate, and blow these up, and use a little bit of grain and some.
Oh, I like this. Could you tell us a little bit of how you did this exactly? Like, what was the process?
Okay, the process of this is quite simple. I can show you very fast. Let me see. I'm not sure.
You can also tell us if you want. I mean,
yeah, but it's. I can very quickly show you.
Okay.
Can you see our breeder now? Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you, everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so here to the right, you can see the elements of which an image is made of. So it's rapeseed, mask, vestment, stupa, box turtle, guacamole, and cougar, velvet lighter. So if I move a slider,
wow,
it moves through latent space, and this was an excellent way to for me to kind of get a feeling of what this technique is about.
Oh wow!
The data sets are already part of the art breeder.
Yes. So the data sets, I think it's not even a specially trained model by Outbreeder. This is just the pure, and I think Big Gun is by Google.
Mm-hmm.
What do you get if you put everything to 1 or 0 or -1?
Then you still get, what I can do is I can show you if I just remove a couple. Let me see. Oh no, oh yeah. I just put it to 0. And then you probably will get, let's keep the lionfish. Is there more? No, it's lionfish at 1. No.
Oh, you still cannot see it though.
Yeah,
okay.
It's close to lionfish, but it isn't. So I guess something's off there, but this is just an illustration of.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Let's see.
So the same way that Tristan can tweak instruments, basically, you can do this with photos.
Yeah.
Up and down, basically.
Yes. And so you can train these on photographs, but you can also train these more on art. And because everything usually starts with some kind of open source, somebody takes that and they build another thing with more data, and they cross combine different training sets and data sets. So everything is it gets quite complicated in the end. So in the end you don't know exactly what was in there. Some training sets are carefully constructed by categorizing, and other training sets are just Tristan mentioned the word what is it, scraped from Google. So it's just like a bot. It just tries to find as many pictures as it can find, and then the model is trained on that, which also gives you the problem that there's also like violence and porn, and there's lots of words in there because there's lots of text, and if you don't filter that out, you get a pretty messy thing. But these guys, this is made in Midjourney, and these guys have a very, very clean model, and they can produce quite interesting images.
Better. Okay.
And I have been working with this for a couple of months now, and I'm doing a couple of things at the same time. But this is slowly, it's very, very different than maybe you've heard of DALL-E, or Google just has a rival of which is pretty similar.
The Empire Struck Back, Tristan, looks like.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So
let me ask you something, Bas.
Yeah.
What about the same kind of question that you asked Tristan? Do we have already passed Turing tests for art models?
Sorry, do we have a pass?
So you asked Tristan about the Turing Turing test. Did I say it?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure that I could grab together 100 images that could fool almost any artist around.
But what about you?
Especially if you talk about abstract art.
Yeah, but not especially, because there's also types of very figurative art that are almost, for me, also almost impossible to spot. I'm not mostly interested in very figurative stuff. I like it when I love to make this kind of stuff where at first glance you think, hey, this is something I know, and then you look further and you don't recognize anything at all. Yeah. I find that very, very fascinating at this moment.
Yeah.
But it's
makes me think of Van Bosch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Makes me think of Van Bosch.
Yeah. There is because someone like Bosch was very much into extremely surreal, strange art, and he did the same thing as these models do, because he combined different animals with demons and little men and household objects, and that's exactly what happens here. So yeah, he's
people in the Middle Age were crazy. Actually, this is very interesting. If you look at some books called bestiaries from the Middle Ages, they are basically filled with images of animals that today you might think they're being created by Gans or DALL-E, because they basically took different kind of animals and they started composing them.
Yeah.
And in many cases they thought that some of those.
How do you call it? Chimera. Yeah.
So there are many.
There's something like the Voynich Manuscript. What was that? You know that?
No, I'm not. No,
oh, it's hundreds of years old, and it's completely crazy. It's just fantasy, but it's everybody tried to decipher this, but it's probably just pure imagination of someone. But
you blow this up a little bit. Anyway.
Wait. Yeah, that's the problem with this.
Okay, no, never mind. If you
Instagram is crap. I can show you. Wait.
How do you interact with whatever is generated by the model?
Okay, so there's different ways. So I started with Artbreeder, and that was just mostly sliders in the beginning. Yeah. And then there was a way to upload images. Mm-hmm. So you have this model which is trained on several tens of thousands of images or hundreds of thousands of images.
Which you pick, or like which you collect.
Well, I didn't train them like Tristan did. I'm mostly using existing materials and notebooks and collabs So notebooks, collabs are a way to use Google's GPUs to work on them for a low price. So I use a lot of that. Let me see. Yeah, well, I started with faces in Artbreeder. I can show you here. Where is it? No. I uploaded all the Van Gogh self-portraits because Vincent van Gogh was kind of an enigma. The way he looked, we don't actually know because he lived. The camera was already invented, but his face was never photographed after he was 19 years old, and he painted himself, but Vincent van Gogh wasn't the most realistic painter, and he was he was somebody who painted himself the way he felt, and so it's always very, very different. So and he had a let me see, I think, oh yeah, there we are. I didn't do this for some time. Yeah. So I have been working a couple of weeks by just uploading many of his self-portraits and try to blend them in an existing model, and then I try to get an end result that looked credible.
Photo-like, yeah.
So I started with Artbreeder because your question was how do you control this? So I started with just uploading in these sliders, and since about a year, it is possible to use words like Tristan just showed to control these guns, which are already. We don't call them guns anymore because they don't use a generative adversarial network anymore. They use something that's called diffusion or latent diffusion, which are in fact two different systems. And what I showed you before, I can show you a couple of these. Yeah. I think I have to share another screen now, but I'm sorry, I don't know where that button is now.
Oh.
Yeah, I have. Because my big Zoom screen is gone. Oh yeah, stop share. I see it. Okay.
Yeah, Zoom.
The beauty of
that's the problem if you don't. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, there we are. Okay. So this is made in Mid-Journey, and you start looking for things that work. So you just start with I want to see an interior room with some sunlight, with looking outside to a garden, maybe in the style of some science fiction movie, and you just put a couple of words there, and you see what works and what doesn't. And slowly you you change some words, and then you pick iterations, and you iterate on those, and slowly you guide the system towards an end result that you really like, which can be quite difficult if you need to make some. Let's say you work for a film studio, and they ask you something very specific. Then it's almost impossible to make exactly what they want. But it's very good to make things that nobody thought about, or if you're an artist and you don't care what you make, as long as it's interesting and it looks good.
But can I ask you something? So do you, when you talk about text, are you talking about a sentence?
Yes.
Single words? And how big of a sentence can you use? Like, can you put a page on it?
Yeah, you can, but the more complex you make it, the more fuzzy it gets, and it doesn't interpret everything the way we do. You can just use a couple of words, but you can also use styles of different artists. And let's say I use Picasso, and I say I want a face like a Picasso portrait. You get something that is, if the model is trained on Picasso very well, you get something that is quite a convincing Picasso portrait. But you probably don't want to make that as an artist, because you don't want to be the second Picasso, especially not if you use a machine for this.
It's like cheating, right? Could you show us 2 or 3 pieces that you're really proud of?
Yes.
Not that people necessarily liked a lot.
Okay.
But you are really proud of.
Okay. This one, can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, this is a new project I'm working on, and it's all based on Shakespeare, Midsummer Night's Dream. And I really like the fact that it's so close to abstract, but your brain constantly recognizes things and tries to make something of it. And some people find this very itchy and irritating, but I love it. And I know there are other people that really like the sensation of seeing. It's like in some abstract art that you can see stuff that you recognize, or even in the clouds, our brains are wired that way. You know that the term pareidolia is a Greek word, and it's a recognition of human faces where there are no human faces.
Okay.
And they think there's an evolutionary trait that we developed, because if you're just sitting in the jungle and there's a tiger looking at you between the same colored foliage, you must be able to recognize him quickly. And at the same time, the first thing you see as a baby is probably the face of your mother or somebody near. It's very important for humans to recognize faces. It's one of the most important traits, most important skills that we need to learn, and that we don't even need to learn because babies are born with it. And I really like to play with that instinct.
Cool. Yeah. Okay.
It does look like a party, and
I like it.
Juliet.
I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
So are you guys seeing things that you want to see, or is the party there?
Maybe both.
It's very
Let me
beautiful.
see if I can find another
Yeah,
one.
it's very festive too, actually. Yeah, and I like. Is that a purple there? I'm a little color blind. Are there?
In this one?
Yeah, is there a lot of?
Yeah, there's a lot of purple aubergine in it, and I really like the little blue tones here.
Yeah, it's royal somehow. All right.
Royal blue?
Yeah, no, royal purple. Normally.
Okay, I don't know. I didn't know that existed. Maybe your royalty is different than ours.
I'm Italian.
Hey, you guys, I'm slowly recovering, coming back to finding words to express. I've been silent for a couple of minutes because I'm just awestruck But what I'm seeing here, and Bas, great work. And
Thank you.
on top of that, I would say that maybe 90 to 95% of how we work with AI exactly the same.
Yeah.
And even the thing where you said that you add some grain to it, scaling it up, because the models usually they don't go high res.
Yeah.
Same thing. I get notes out of it and I run it through my synthesizers to get higher quality out of it. Exactly
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, you probably, when you did this 2 years ago, you probably had to do even more. And in a year from now, you probably have to do less, because if you, I'm very much on these developments, and I probably worked for 70 to 80 hours a week for a couple of years now, and almost every 2 weeks there is something that blows me away, because there's some new technique, because everyone is doing it. When I started doing this, I really didn't know that AI was getting so big. And the Chinese are doing it, and Google and Microsoft and Elon Musk, and everyone is on this. So yeah.
Yeah, poets call it the singularity, huh? But yeah, go on.
Yeah, this one I also like. This is a little bit more figurative, and I really like to combine kind of cultural heritage by completely mixing it with other things. So like this is when you do text to image. You can very easily say, okay, I want this to be a comic, but it also needs to be classical Japanese, but it also needs to be a little bit Jugendstil, and you just combine all these words, and you get these styles that are very recognizable for anyone, and still nobody can say, oh, this is exactly like, because it's so mixed in the end, and I'm trying to find these things that and you find that everything is connectable, everything works together in a way, so yeah,
this is awesome. I love it.
I also like this one. This one is on display in Paris at the moment in the gallery. This was made with VQ GAN, and so this was one of the later GAN things I did before I went to a lot of diffusion. This is a photograph I made of people letting the air out of a hot air balloon where I was just in. I made a ride with my dad, who was 70 at the time, and so I for his birthday we made this balloon ride, and I took a lot of pictures at the time, and I photographed them letting the air out, and then I'm using these photographs that look quite interesting and already a bit weird, and I throw them into the gun and see what it works, what comes out. And I use sometimes I do, I don't know, hundreds of different iterations, tens of different text prompts I try, and sometimes it's just crap. But if you do this for a couple of years, you get this intuitive feeling, and you slowly guide it to something that is interesting.
You develop an awareness of it.
Yes.
Yes. Then you can. But could you please show us the meditative astronaut, and then later
let me see
where you took it from, right? Because
okay, yeah.
Because there's something so beautiful he did with another work that is incredibly beautiful. So
let me see if I can find it. Okay, I didn't wait here maybe. No.
Otherwise, you can also go on the Instagram part. Otherwise,
yeah. The thing is, I don't want to look for a couple of minutes now, and I don't know exactly where it is. So
yeah, never mind.
Okay. Because I'm using this machine to do most of my work. I'm lazy as hell. I know that as an artist, I really need to define myself here, because I don't use the brush, you know, I don't use so everything that can be a recognizable style is quite important. So I try to find common themes and things that I personally have some interest in, and that I think that fit this latent space, and that really work. And I think kind of fairy tales and mythology and that kind of things are because those are the things that always have tickled our fantasy, and if there's anything that needs to be done in Gogh is letting the creativity and the fantasy go. So these kind of fairy tale images work best for me, and also define a certain style that I kind of call personal.
Okay, so Bas, could you can we zoom out from your work now, and can we come back? Because I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. So when we were talking earlier, I asked you a little bit to elaborate on your relationship with the machine, and you came out with the AI, with the tools, and you made a couple of interesting analogies. So would you wanna say this here again? Because I'm curious about how, because Tristan, Tomek, Issi, they're both, all of them computer scientists. So I'm really curious about their reactions. And you guys, of course, and the girl, woman, ask questions as you wish. So what's your relationship with AI? How do you see it?
Okay, well, when you start learning how to use a camera as a photographer, the first couple of months, if you work on it intensely, you have this strange device in your hand, and you need to know what all these buttons do, and every time you take a photograph, you have to think. Of course, you can use autofocus and auto exposure and all these computer tricks that are inside. But if you really want to control this camera, you need to get to know it. And as there's a certain point where you kind of flow into the tech and become one with it. I noticed this because I was kind of starting with photography, and I could make nice pictures, but I noticed that every time I was having dinner and I drank too much beer, I was unable to make good photographs after, and that was because my brain was clouded. And I remember that at one point I was in India, and I met someone, and we had a dinner together. And I was walking home, and I had a lot of beer, and I saw something, and this was at a certain point. I saw something, and I wanted to photograph it, and I made some really nice photographs. And I remember just thinking, okay, now I'm at this point where I don't use my brain anymore. I'm completely using this machine with my intuitively. And with guns, I've noticed that you kind of have to develop a strong feeling for what this latent space is all about and what it can do. And it's because it's so extremely difficult nobody knows what's inside this deep learning neural network, because nobody put it in. We build a machine that learned itself a lot. So nobody knows what's exactly in there. So you can't know, so you have to feel. And I was comparing to Antonio, I was comparing this with, let's say, a dark wood, a forest, where you walk around every night. At a certain point, you know where all these, you know where to go, you know where the trees are. And so before you develop this intuition, it seems easy to produce something, but you will produce exactly the same as another person that uses the same system.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. From my point of view, defining my style first and foremost is the texture, the vibe, the kind of instruments I use and how the instruments sound. Also, I don't use those models like completely. I don't use all the heavy metal genres in it. So I think the first album has been almost entirely thrash metal and power metal because of the fine things that came out of it, those fine, like almost baroque thingies that came out of it. Yeah, definitely. And also great analogy with walking around in the woods and you start very blank and then you know your way around. But what I also saw is that sometimes some portal opens and you are a completely different set of woods. You can go back and forth. There was this one moment in time I always did not believe what I'm seeing with my music AI. So it took me quite a lot of time to grow accustomed and also to trust it. I thought it was crap because it was the first model that I've trained on that dataset, like first shot, pre-processed, executed it. Still lots of surprises, and it surprised me over 3/4 of a year with things that it could do that I was not aware of that it could do. Like, I'll give you one example, and then going back to the discussion. It is trained on 4 bars, only 4 bars, but it can do more with a trick.
I can tell you something. I was working on these big gun, the 1,000 categories and all photographs and all just normal things, and I didn't know anything about gun at the time. So I asked the guy who wrote this this art breeder because I was getting results that resembled Frank Frazetta and Giger and like science fiction artists of the 70s and the 80s, and I asked him, are these models trained on these artworks? And he said, no, completely not. That's inside of you, and that's because you are looking for this. So that's and because the combination of all these models or all these sources and their output and the latent space, it can be get so complicated that you can find things that were never put in there because they're in your brain and you know where to look for them, or you recognize them when you see a little bit of it, and then you go a little bit further and you steer it the right way, and it's amazing. So that's the moment that I thought, okay, so this is more than just a machine, just an algorithm that just gives me can only give me what we put in it. It can give me more. It can give me what I have in my head, just like a brush or a piece of marble with a chisel. So yeah, there was a moment of how do you say that? Aha-Erlebnis.
Yeah.
Aha-Erlebnis, yeah. Sehr gut.
Or Eureka moment. So anybody can ask any question to Tristan or Bas. Jesse, you've been very quiet. I don't like that.
That's because I'm fascinated. I'm just like taking it all in.
So articulate a little bit this fascination and come up with a couple of questions. Now.
No. I can't. Awestruck. No, It's amazing. Like the work is beautiful. And I mean, I'm thinking like, how would I apply it? You said you started with photography and you formed your own style. And my form of photography is to put myself in a position where no one's ever been, like in the mountains. And at the beginning of this, you were talking about blanks on the map. And that's what I've always done, is like go to places where humans have never been before, but I'm not a photographer. And I'm thinking like, how could I take all that photography and put it into big gun now? Like, what could I do with it? And it's like, you just opened up a world for me that I didn't know existed. It's so cool. Like,
you're welcome. I opened that world.
No ego there at all.
So you're excited, Jesse, I'm hearing.
Yeah, super cool. And it's only noon in America, so I have the rest of the day to work on this. You guys it's the end of the day for you. So.
For some.
End of the week even.
Can I build upon Jesse's example? I just have like it's a question on my side actually. Do you think that these GANs can be used for finding new routes towards the top? I mean, Jesse, would these be some kind of a mixture of something useful and artful?
I think you could, like you would have to aggregate, you'd have to start a web scrape of mountain photography and climbing photography, and then you could bring them together to like visualize new and artistic ways to get up a mountain. And I don't know what you could do with it, but like, yeah, you've got my mind spinning in like in ways that you could, like, no, I bet there's no alpinist in the world that is thinking in terms of AI. Like it's just bringing two different worlds together. It's super cool.
I've tried doing Ansel Adams on Mars kind of prompts in Midjourney, and I didn't work on that very long, but I'm sure you'll be able to make something quite fascinating, and because you can combine these things that were never combined, and that makes it quite interesting.
Oh, this okay. Wow, more, come on. You see, questions.
I put my my Instagram. I put my Instagram on in the chat, so if somebody wants to look there, because my I don't use my personal name. I use the name Gambrud. So if you want to look,
you will make me make Instagram. I'm like, until now I don't want to have Instagram, but now I guess
Instagram is horrible. I used it for a couple of years, and now I hardly do, because they just put all these videos in there. You have to watch them. It's crazy, like TikTok.
Yeah.
It's deteriorating.
I use Instagram to learn about science, actually, but this is me. I have learned so many concepts of physics and chemistry just like doing like this. This is so cool. Yeah, but I purposely, edited all my. I upset a lot of people because I stopped following everyone. And then I said, okay, I want to use this learning tool. So I said, okay, what do I want to learn about? And I said, physics, quantum physics, chemistry, biology, art, and then coding. So I looked at all the hashtags, okay, that were like doing these things. And now it.
Don't you have books in Italy?
Yeah, but.
Instagram is more fun.
Okay.
No, but these are like literally fields of knowledge, and also the visual is very powerful, because sometimes a couple of sentences, like for example, I learned why like a new definition of gravity. People think that gravity is like some sort of force, okay? But I learned that attract that a body exerts gravity in terms of like force on another body. But then I looked at this little thing and says, well, it's not actually any force going on. It's that objects change the space-time. So they somehow they alter it. And they alter it, like they make and then it's the example of a ball on a piece of fabric, basically. So things are not attracted. It's not a force exerted. They just fall close to other bodies. And it was fascinating. I think it works in other fields, whatever, doesn't matter. But please, yeah, I think it's cool to use it like this. But I understand, the bias. TensorFlow, do you have questions for our artists?
Yeah, actually, Tristan, I wanted to ask if you were thinking about publishing the tool that you've created for other artists to use in some form. So as you saw, Bas started with Artbreeder.
Yeah.
And what you're working on could enable producers, etc., to generate their own music.
Yeah. I feel what you mean. I'm constantly thinking about this, about also productionizing and even monetizing the whole thing. I'm still gathering feedback. I've published one of the models inside this tiny little composer that I've published. There's a posted here, just straightforward, little clicking, getting something out of that. I am very hesitant to publish more because I'm secretly working with a couple of people on something. So definitely.
Because it is a super powerful tool. I think, like, if you would have, one of the producers who is creating top grossing music, sit with it, they would create more, definitely.
The beauty of this is also that the access bar to, I don't know if this is the expression, but like anyway, the access point to being creative, it's being lowered so much, and this is very nice. Because with music, like this kind of thing that you showed, I could probably like sit down and use it myself, knowing nothing about music. And with the guns, I mean, we at some point I tried to play with those already a little bit, and some really cool things were coming out. So I really love that. To some extent, AI democratizes the access to art, to creativity, because you can imagine what you're doing, Tristan, and what Bas is doing in probably a lot of other domains. I was thinking about actually thinking like, okay, can I build something like this for poems, for creative writing?
Yes.
And
it exists.
Yeah,
I mean, people doing this.
The principles are the same. I mean, it's just a matter of customizing it a little bit, and it could be done for virtually every kind of creative realm, I suppose, and even creative, not insofar as art, any creative realm. Like if something like this could be created, for example, could be done to generate business ideas, for example. I don't know, because the principle, like what my feeling from what I've seen so far is that Tristan and Bas like operate in theory different fields, but in practice they're doing the same thing. And what is emerging here is that it's just how intelligence works, because the principles and creativity, because the principles are pretty much the same. And they're and now it's very, to me at least, very visible. Do you share my revelation, or
I have to add something on top of that.
Oh, there you go.
Experience is, well, I come from a background where I composed music by either recording something that I came up with or clicking those note events inside the digital audio workstation. This is something that I have not done for quite some time. There is a song that I published, I think 2 years ago, where every note in there I placed myself. Now I just use this AI-driven approach where I ask for some ideas and then I edit the ideas, I curate them, I edit them by, can you give me another bar here, maybe add another instrument there, until it hits the mood. And it hits the mood almost immediately. It's just a tiny little path that I have to walk until I get something that is actually what fits the idea that I had. Not the idea in a sense, in the shape of the notes, but the certain, now comes the word, feeling that I wanted to go in. I get this almost immediately. And what I found challenging, thinking about it, is that being creative with that approach is, it's not so much of a struggle anymore. It's a very, very joyful exploration of possibilities in creative space.
Yeah.
No struggle, no frustration whatsoever.
No, because this is something that I'm sorry.
Because those tools allow us to very elegantly navigate through the space of ideas.
Yeah.
And you're already in the space of ideas. And just what is here, and you see it, you hear it, and then you go left and right, get something similar. It's marvelous.
And to be honest, this is something else that that I've noticed is that people who don't engage with creative or struggle to engage with creative enterprises are freaked out by the beginning. And what is the beginning? The generation of the idea. For example, the why I talk from the kind of things I do, right? So writing, people are freaked out by the white page. So if we like keeping the analogy, the AI in this case gives you a page filled with ideas, and then you go inside that page and modulate, edit, and restructure, and so it eliminates the first barrier, which is I cannot generate ideas, because a lot of us freak out because we think that we cannot generate ideas. And so AI comes in and says, okay, I'll generate the ideas for you. Then you have to do the rest, of course, which is, in both cases, editing. I explain this with this word. You edit, basically. And
I've been an art director for a couple of years on video games. And this is working with a collab with a machine is very much like art directing somebody who's at that time I wasn't a great animator, I wasn't a great modeler, but I could make these people do I could push them in the right way, and that's also a skill that I had to develop to kind of steer another entity. Let's call it that, because then it was a human and now it's a machine, but it's also something that you have to develop. These machines, it would make it easier for us, but at the same time, our standards will go up in for certain things, because when everybody can work with these same techniques, so some things that we now think are very hard will be very easy.
Yeah, but this is great, because the quality of what we do will just skyrocket like this, which is awesome. It's not terrible or anything. It simply means, because if everybody does it, I don't think that everybody would do it, but if more people do it and it's easier to create like higher quality level, it just means that, in order to emerge, you're going to have to do really crazy things which is great.
I think so.
Because
too.
imagine having not one great poet, but 10 at the same time, or 20.
Yeah.
Like how much meaning you can generate, how much beauty you can map.
Can I say one last thing?
No.
Because everybody will have to do at a certain point with deep fakes, and there's a lot of negative things that happen with AI as well, and the problem with privacy, but we as humans, we need to learn how to work with these machines, because they are going to be here in every field you can imagine. There will be AI, and to be able to cope with this, I think music and art made by these things are ways to in a playfully learn how to understand these systems, and I think it's a very important thing that everybody.
Okay. You guys have another shot at questions, and then I think we should go, because I'm starving. And I don't want. I'm really starving. I'm sorry. So,
Bas, would you mind sharing a little bit of the tools that you're using to?
Yeah, sure.
To do what you do.
I put
just
them
to explore, see.
I use a couple of collabs, and I really like to combine things. So I sometimes have the output from one notebook and I put it into another. But mostly I'm working with Clip versus VQ GAN.
GAN and Clip, yeah.
Yeah. And disco diffusion. So all these keywords,
yeah.
Jax diffusion. diffusion, latent diffusion, Lion 4. So these are a few keywords. If you just type them in, you can find everything from tutorials to the collab itself to notebooks. Yeah.
Awesome.
And there are also pages, and you can find 100 of these. I mean, there's so, because they all get forked. Most of them are open source, and so people take them and change them a little bit, and so it's very interesting.
A living organism.
Yeah.
There you go. Jesse, do you have something else to say?
No, I mean,
Generate questions. Jesse, I want to get to a point where I press a button and generate questions.
It'll never happen. I like to listen, but I mean, I think Bas and Tristan should collab on something and bring the visual to the music world. And I want to see a musical representation of Bas's work and then the visual representation of Tristan's music.
I'd be sick.
Well, the egocentric position would be that I need music videos for my music, but the external view would be that maybe you need a soundtrack for your art.
Awesome. Wow.
Meeting in the middle.
Yeah, this is the one thing. I've been an animator for a long time, and I started doing photography because I really like the power and the magic of a still image. Movement is extremely difficult, and especially when you do it synthetically. And for me, I haven't seen that much. I have seen great generative art in general that looks amazing when it's animated, but most Ganimations that I've seen always look a little bit crappy to me, and I'm not there yet. Maybe one day.
Keep me updated.
Yeah, I will.
Wow.
The last thing I tried was this deep dream on a couple of videos that I took, just adding eyes to everything.
Yeah.
Do you guys always drink when you produce? Like, what's wrong with you?
Good experimenting, Antonio.
Yeah, I see. I can see that. So okay. So I wanna see. Do you have any questions for our guests? Anything? Okay.
Nope.
So I would like to thank you, both of you, and Jesse and Tomek. And yes, please.
Second, just quickly.
Yeah. No.
Makes your video a little longer. I have included a couple of links here. Gauguin by NVIDIA, definitely something. And Jesse, well, you love mountains. You have to go down the Gauguin 2 road. You can paint beautiful mountains with that. It's very easy to use.
I just saved all these links under bookmarks called art.
And also the last link I posted, VQGun and Clip, one of the implementations that I found useful. A couple of others didn't work. Please, Antonio, sorry for the interruption.
No worries. I was just saying thank you, because this is actually one of the ways in which I experience my creativity. Because I'm starting to recognize these things everywhere. So I realize that talking to cool people, it's like a creative thing for me. And what do I create? Meaning, like a dense and thick, like what we just had. And I'm very grateful for everybody to have been here today and to have shared questions and art and kindness and beauty. I can go eat in peace after all this.
Mangiare.
Don't mangiare, exactly. Give me a pizza. So well, I'll see you next week. Those of you who want to show up, and Bas, we do this every week. Okay. So anytime you wanna just show up and watch a little bit of art with us. Okay. So when there are no guests, I basically take artists and we all watch them together, and I And I ask everybody to, elaborate on how they feel, what they think, what they see. So you could also be part of this anytime you want. And the link we use is that. Please save the link. You might say, okay, this is I can maybe create another event or something, but I keep forgetting about it. So sorry. So I wish you a very pleasant weekend.
Okay.
Those of you in Berlin, please go have fun for me. And
have a great time.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. It was amazing. Have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
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 Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.